Hello, I'm Kyle, and I suppose my life could be described as quite typical. At 30 years of age, I find myself reflecting on a routine that has remained unchanged for as long as I can recall. Rise, head to the office, return home, and do it all over again. I'm okay with it, really. I've always found a way to embrace the ordinary without lamenting the absence of thrill. While some may consider my life to be mundane, I find a certain comfort in its simplicity. It's expected, cozy, and, to be frank, secure. I haven't tied the knot, and I haven't truly experienced a deep relationship. I've consistently convinced myself that I wasn't prepared for it. A relationship demands time, energy, and focus, and I simply couldn't figure out how to juggle all of that alongside my career. My priorities have consistently centered around my professional commitments. I invested the time, the energy, and the commitment, and truthfully, it has yielded results. I have been employed at a mid-sized marketing firm for 6 years now. I began my journey as a novice analyst, yet I've ascended to a senior role through dedication and hard work. I earn a respectable salary, and my job stability is quite solid. My boss, Mr. Smith, is a 68-year-old man who has been in the industry longer than I've been around. He embodies the principles of loyalty and diligence, which mirror the foundation of my professional journey. Mr. Smith is not exactly the laid-back type. He possesses elevated expectations and a keen perception for nuance, which, to be frank, can come off as somewhat daunting. However, he is just, and I hold that in high regard. Throughout the years, we've developed a solid working relationship. I consistently ensure that I meet deadlines, perform my tasks effectively, and maintain a low profile. It's straightforward. Upon reflection, it becomes clear that my existence is largely centered on my professional endeavors. I rise with the dawn, head to the office, and immerse myself in a day filled with data analysis, report preparation, and engaging in meetings. During my lunch break, I typically enjoy a swift meal, perhaps a sandwich or a salad, as I take a moment to catch up on emails or peruse the latest news. Nothing particularly thrilling. I have no objections, however. I'm not looking for thrill. I simply need to accomplish my tasks. Yet, on this specific day, a shift occurred. It began just like any ordinary day. As I settled into the break room, I found myself scrolling through my phone, passing the time during lunch. Engrossed in my own reflections, I suddenly became aware of footsteps approaching from behind. I glanced over to find Margaret, the wife of Mr. Smith, approaching me. I had a solid understanding of Margaret, at least from a professional standpoint. She had made a few trips to the office, yet her presence was infrequent. She exuded warmth and courtesy, yet I seldom focused on her beyond the brief exchanges during office gatherings. She offered a smile and took a seat opposite me. "Hello, Kyle. How is your day unfolding?" she inquired, her voice warm and inviting. "Great, appreciate it," I responded, sharing a brief smile in return. She nodded, and after a fleeting pause, leaned in just a touch closer. "Hey, I have something to share with you." Before I had the chance to inquire about her meaning, she effortlessly slipped something into my coat pocket. Initially, I assumed it was merely some work-related documents, but as I glanced up, I noticed she was already turning away, making her way back to the elevator. I found myself sitting there, gazing into my coat pocket, momentarily lost in the uncertainty of what had just transpired. With deliberate care, I delved into my pocket, extracting what appeared to be a tiny key. Gleaming, metallic. A note was affixed to it, meticulously folded. My hands trembled slightly as I opened the note. It stated, "Room 302. I'll be here at 9 p.m., eagerly anticipating your arrival. Margaret." I blinked several times, rereading it to confirm I wasn't conjuring illusions. Surely, this must be a misunderstanding, wouldn't you agree? Margaret, my boss's wife, just handed me a key to a hotel room and instructed me to meet her there tonight? It was perplexing. I was utterly astonished. Questions swirled in my mind, yet answers eluded me. What could have motivated her to take this action? What was I meant to do? Should I leave? Should I just overlook it? The sensation lingered, a persistent reminder that this was not something I could easily dismiss. A gnawing curiosity consumed me, yet fear loomed large in my mind. What if it were an error? Or even more troubling, what if it were a sort of examination? As the day unfolded and the hours passed, a profound sense of curiosity enveloped me. There was an unmistakable sense of difference about it. It felt as though I was poised on the brink of something monumental, something that had the potential to transform everything. As the clock struck 9 p.m., my decision was firmly in place. This was something I simply couldn't overlook. I needed to uncover the truth of the situation. With my belongings in tow, I headed to the hotel, slipping into my car, the key clutched tightly in my hand, my heart racing with anticipation. At the time, I was unaware that that night would alter the course of everything. Upon my arrival at the hotel, I found my hands still quivering from the overwhelming shock of the experience. Never before had I experienced such a profound sense of disconnection. I lingered before the door for a moment, fixating on the room number 302, attempting to reassure myself that this was merely a mix-up. The chill of the metal key pressed against my palm, its weight a tangible reminder of the uncertainty that was eating away at me. With a steadying breath, I inserted the key into the lock and gently pushed the door open. I anticipated the possibility of entering an empty room, or perhaps facing an uncomfortable encounter. As the door slowly opened, there she was, Margaret, seated at a quaint round table by the window, a gentle smile gracing her lips as she lifted her gaze to meet mine. "You're here," she said, her voice brimming with relief and an elusive emotion I couldn't quite identify. Her eyes held a sincere warmth, an element that caught me entirely off guard. Her expression radiated joy at my arrival. Yeah," I said, my voice emerging with a hint of hesitation that I hadn't intended. I had no clear expectations. Margaret rose and approached me, her fluid motion amplifying my sense of inadequacy. Without a word, she took the key from my hand and delicately set it on the table, then motioned for me to enter. "There's no need to feel anxious," she reassured, her voice soothing and imbued with a quiet assurance. "Kindly step inside." I entered the room, doing my utmost to conceal the nerves bubbling within me. The initial observation that struck me was the sheer contrast of the atmosphere, unlike anything I had ever envisioned. The space transcended the ordinary confines of a typical hotel room. It was as if it had been lifted from the pages of a love story. A table stood in the heart of the room, a petite candle flickering at its center, casting a gentle glow throughout the space. A bottle of wine rested elegantly in an ice bucket, accompanied by 2 glasses poised beside it. The aroma of freshly cooked dishes wafted through the atmosphere. It was nearly flawless. The atmosphere was thick with romance, yet I found myself feeling utterly misplaced. "Wow," I found myself exclaiming, my eyes darting from the table to the gentle glow of the lights, the elegant wine glasses, and the meticulously arranged plates. "This is quite substantial." Margaret smiled, her expression completely at ease. She appeared utterly relaxed, as if this were the most ordinary occurrence imaginable. She expressed her desire to create something truly unique. "This has been on my mind for some time, and I wanted to ensure I expressed it perfectly." I found myself at a loss for words. The whole scenario seemed almost dreamlike, as if it were something I couldn't fully comprehend. This was an entirely new experience for me. Honestly, I found myself at a loss for how to deal with it. Yet, there she stood before me, her eyes unwavering, anticipating my next action. I moved ahead and settled into the chair at the table. Margaret acted without a moment's pause. With a fluid motion, she poured the wine into the glasses, her hand steady and elegant. Everything exuded elegance and purpose. "Do you feel like eating?" she inquired, her tone now tinged with a gentle warmth. "I got your favorite. I recalled that you consistently choose the steak during our office dinners." I cast my eyes upon the plates before me, taking in the sight of the flawlessly cooked steak, creamy mashed potatoes, and vibrant grilled vegetables. She recalled. I found myself questioning if I should feel honored or a bit uneasy. Regardless, one could not overlook the depth of consideration that permeated the entire situation. I nodded, feeling a parched sensation in my throat. Absolutely, this appears wonderful, I remarked, extending my hand towards the fork. My hands trembled slightly, and I wished she remained oblivious to it. The last thing I wished for was for her to notice just how overwhelmed I felt. Margaret settled into her seat across from me, a playful smile gracing her lips as she lifted her glass for a sip. There's no need to be so rigid, Kyle. Unwind. We are simply enjoying our dinner. Take your time. Yet, finding a moment of ease proved to be quite challenging. The entire ambience was infused with an elusive quality that I struggled to identify. An atmosphere of closeness enveloped them, a bond that was at once peculiar and charged with energy. I sensed her gaze upon me, her eyes not merely observing, but truly perceiving, in a manner that sent a shiver of awareness down my spine. We dined quietly for a few moments, the gentle clinking of silverware the sole sound in the space. Margaret would sometimes cast a fleeting glance my way, her smile unwavering, yet the depth in her eyes conveyed a multitude of unspoken thoughts. Her gaze held an intensity that sent my stomach into a whirl, a blend of longing and an uncharted depth that caught me off guard. At last, she uttered another word, her tone softer this time. Your dedication is commendable, Kyle, keep your attention on your craft. That truly deserves admiration. I lifted my eyes from my plate, finally locking onto her gaze for the first time since we had taken our seats. Her eyes held a depth that constricted my chest, a blend of admiration intertwined with something far more intimate. Thank you, I replied, forcing down the knot in my throat. I have consistently aimed to concentrate on what truly counts. She inclined her head, leaning in just a bit, her gaze fixed intently on mine. And that's precisely why I've been observing you, Kyle, she murmured gently. I have observed you for quite a while, and I must say, what I've seen truly appeals to me. Her words made my heart race. I found myself uncertain about how to reply. Was she expressing what I believed she was expressing? The atmosphere in the room grew heavy, and I felt an undeniable sense of being on the brink of something monumental, something that had the power to alter everything. Yet, I found myself at a loss for what steps to take from here. I parted my lips to utter a word. Nothing emerged, despite the urge to express. Margaret reclined in her chair, her gaze unwaveringly fixed on me. In that fleeting moment, I found myself gazing back, uncertain of what lay ahead. In that instant, a sense of peril enveloped me, as if I were precariously balanced on the brink of an unfathomable abyss. Her words struck me with overwhelming force, and the heaviness of the silence enveloped the room. I found myself in a dilemma, contemplating whether to voice my thoughts or simply allow the moment to slip away unnoticed. Yet, it was evident that I had lost my grip on the situation. The circumstances were evolving, and I found myself caught in the midst of it all. Yet, despite my efforts to fight it, I couldn't ignore the sensation that there was something about this, about her, that drew me closer. Her presence held an undeniable allure, a force that captivated my attention. Even with all the rational thoughts swirling in my mind urging me to leave, my feet remained firmly rooted in that dimly lit room, facing her across the table. Her gaze was unwavering, filled with a quiet anticipation, as if she were waiting for me to make a move or utter a word. I finally exhaled and shattered the stillness. Margaret, I began, my voice just a soft murmur. I'm at a loss for words in response to that. Her smile was gentle, and her gaze remained fixed on me. There's no need for words, Kyle, she said, her voice carrying a soothing quality. I want to assure you that my intention is not to hurry you or put you in an awkward position. I wanted you to know that you've been on my mind for some time now. I took a deep breath, grappling with the weight of her words. What was I meant to say in response to that? I wasn't just some naive, inexperienced individual. Indeed, I had spent years in the workforce, encountering my fair share of intricate situations. However, this was a completely unique experience. We carried on with our meal in quietude. However, the ambience had entirely transformed. What began as an ordinary dinner had evolved into a scene thick with unexpressed feelings, longings, and maybe even a hint of remorse. We both understood that this was not something you could simply turn your back on. Yet the question remained, was I truly capable of managing the unfolding events? As dinner drew to a close, it seemed as though I had experienced a whole lifetime within just a few fleeting hours. Margaret stepped away to refresh herself, leaving me alone with my half-empty glass of wine, my mind adrift in contemplation. The atmosphere in the room had shifted, enveloping everything in an unsettling stillness. The gentle flicker of the candle appeared to taunt me, as though it was challenging me to take the next step. Upon Margaret's return, the professional demeanor I had observed earlier in the day had vanished. She wore something more relaxed, yet still exuding an air of sophistication. Her demeanor transformed from commanding to something gentler, more welcoming. She glided over to the couch and beckoned for me to come sit beside her. After a brief pause, I decided to pursue her. As I settled into my seat, she moved nearer, and before I realized it, she was leaning in, her lips almost brushing against my ear. "I hope I'm not coming on too strong," she said gently, "but I've been feeling quite lonely, Kyle. I'm not requesting anything beyond your comfort, but I wanted to express that I desire a deeper connection." The warmth surged within me as her words took hold. Thoughts surged through me, each urging me to retreat, to escape and erase this moment from my memory. Yet, another part of my being, something profound and instinctual, urged me to remain. As I caught her gaze, I understood that I too wasn't prepared to turn away just yet. Her presence was undeniably captivating, an allure that had pulled me in from the very first moment we began to talk. In that instant, uncertainty enveloped me, yet deep down, I understood that walking away was not an option. Not at this moment. We lingered in that moment, exchanging words about all and nothing at all. The dialogue flowed effortlessly, despite a subtle tension lingering in the atmosphere, a hushed expectation of what could unfold next. The space seemed to shrink around us, as if we were ensnared in a delicate web, caught between the possibility of liberation and the risk of being ensnared in an inescapable situation. Leaving the situation behind was no longer a simple option for me. Something genuine had developed between us, and regardless of my feelings about it, it was destined to alter everything. Uncertainty loomed ahead, yet one truth stood clear in my mind. This marked merely the dawn of an experience that eluded my comprehension at the time. As I quietly dressed and prepared to leave, I came to understand that what had begun as a simple dinner had evolved into something far more intricate, something that would test every limit I had established for myself. As I stepped out of the hotel room that morning, the burden of the secret that was just starting to take shape between us felt more substantial than I had ever anticipated. A few days had passed since that night. A handful of days spent evading the unavoidable, masquerading as if all was well while, in truth, nothing resonated as it once did. I was uncertain about how to navigate the situation that had unfolded between Margaret and me. A dense fog enveloped my mind, obscuring every thought and decision that tried to surface. The office buzzed with its usual activity. Upon entering, I exchanged pleasantries with a few colleagues, settled at my desk, and attempted to dive into my tasks, yet concentrating proved to be an elusive endeavor. Each time I lifted my gaze from the glow of my computer screen, my thoughts drifted back to that hotel room. The way Margaret gazed at me, her gentle laughter, the way her fingers brushed against my arm as if it were the most effortless gesture imaginable. Everything felt overwhelmingly dreamlike and difficult to comprehend. And still, it was genuine. It had been a long time since I last exchanged words with her after that evening. Silence on all fronts. Only quietness, from her and from myself. I found myself torn between the choice of feigning ignorance or facing the issue directly. Yet, whenever I thought about making contact, a surge of guilt and doubt enveloped me. What was I even considering? Was I merely a casualty of a fleeting lapse in strength? Or did I truly desire for it to unfold? The more I remained quiet, the greater the accumulation of questions became. And then, just when I believed I had reached my limit, she emerged. Margaret. She glided by my desk, heading toward her office. Her typical assured gait. Though she averted her gaze, her presence pressed down on me, heavy and undeniable. The room seemed to close in on me. Every nerve in my body became acutely aware in an instant. I gaze at my screen, feigning productivity, yet my heart pounds with anticipation. I needed to approach her, but what words would I choose? Hey, I've been reflecting on that evening. I'm not quite sure what it signifies, but I believe it's important for us to have a conversation. That seemed utterly absurd. However, overlooking it proved to be even more detrimental. It was not an issue that could simply fade away. It was only at lunchtime that I finally had my first opportunity. As I sat in the break room, savoring my sandwich and scrolling through my phone, Margaret made her entrance. She paused near the table, her gaze averted, caught in a moment of uncertainty. "May we have a conversation?" she inquired softly. Her voice was steady, yet tinged with a hint of doubt. I glanced upward, taken aback. I was taken aback by how quickly she came up to me. "Of course," I replied, attempting to maintain my composure, despite the rapid thumping of my heart. She settled into her seat opposite me, her gaze fixed unwaveringly on mine. The distance separating us was electric, as if an unspoken tension lingered in the atmosphere. For the first time since that night, we found ourselves in the same room, stripped of pretense and the office barrier that had once divided us. She started, her voice a mere breath, reflecting on the events that transpired. Indeed, it came as a surprise. "I aim to ensure you wouldn't find yourself in a situation that felt uneasy or demanding." I nodded, striving to maintain my composure. I'm at a loss for words. I've been reflecting on it quite a bit as well. I find myself at a loss for its meaning. "Margaret, I'm uncertain about our next steps." She let out a gentle sigh, her eyes becoming more tender. I hoped for simplicity, Kyle. Yet, I found it impossible to dismiss my emotions, and I couldn't simply act as if nothing had transpired. It has been gnawing at my mind ever since. I gazed at my hands, feeling uncertain about how to reply. I had devoted the past few days to maintaining my distance, attempting to persuade myself that I hadn't erred significantly, that it held no real significance. Yet here I was, facing her, and the truth hit me, I could no longer maintain the facade. "I'm uncertain about what this is," I lowered my voice. "Yet, I understand that I cannot simply overlook it. We cannot simply revert to the illusion that everything is as it should be. Is it possible for us?" She nodded slowly, her expression tinged with a hint of melancholy. "Unfortunately, that's not possible. It seems we are both aware of that. I have no regrets about what transpired, Kyle. However, I am not gullible. This is a bit chaotic. It transforms everything." I took a deep breath, sensing the gravity of her words. It seemed as though she was confronting the reality I had been evading. "What comes next?" I inquired, my voice scarcely rising above a whisper. Margaret paused for a brief moment, then leaned in a bit closer, softening her voice further. "We should exercise caution. We must ensure that this remains a secret. Not at this moment, no. However, we must determine the implications of this for us. We must embrace honesty in our communication." I gazed at her, absorbing the words she was sharing. Indeed, she was correct. Everything changed irrevocably after the events that unfolded. We had crossed the threshold, and now we were faced with the repercussions. "I'm uncertain about the direction this is taking, Margaret." I finally spoke, my voice heavy with doubt. "However, I concur. Caution is essential." She offered me a faint, nearly melancholic smile. "We'll find a way, Kyle. We'll proceed gradually, focusing on each step as it comes." In that moment, it seemed as if we were crossing a threshold into a realm we both understood was best left untouched. A hidden truth. A perilous situation. Yet, in that instant, I found myself lacking the resolve to turn away. I was unsure of how to proceed. A month had slipped by since that chat in the break room. The atmosphere between Margaret and me had changed, yet we silently decided to keep it concealed. No one in the office had a clue, and it was essential that it remained that way. We would gather on several occasions beyond the office, each meeting meticulously arranged, always in locations where we could remain unnoticed. The attraction was undeniable whenever she came into view, yet we both recognized the limits we needed to honor. She had seemed withdrawn recently, not in a frigid manner, but rather as if she were burdened by an unseen weight. I made an effort to keep my thoughts simple. Perhaps it was merely the weight of it all, yet I couldn't dispel the sense that a transformation was imminent. Each day unfolded in a tense anticipation, caught between the uncertainty of whether I should wait for her to act or if the initiative lay with me. Yet, it appeared that neither of us was ready to step over that boundary, at least for the moment. One evening, as I settled in at home, my phone buzzed unexpectedly. A message from Margaret, straightforward yet unmistakable. "May we have a conversation? I must see you." I acted without a moment's pause. I slipped on my jacket, stepped out of the house, and made my way to our usual meeting spot. Uncertainty loomed over me, yet my heart raced, caught in a whirlwind of exhilaration and apprehension. I parked my car, inhaled deeply, and stepped into the cafe where she had instructed me to meet her. As I caught sight of her by the window, a weight settled in my chest. Her appearance held an intriguing quality that set her apart. Her visage held a gentleness, yet an undeniable gravity accompanied her presence. She glanced up at me, and for a fleeting instant, I feared she might be displeased. However, when her smile broke through, the determination in her gaze became unmistakable. "Hey," I said, striving to maintain a calm tone. She nodded, her smile lingering, yet it failed to illuminate her eyes. "Hello, Kyle." We both settled into our seats, and for a brief moment, silence enveloped us. A palpable tension hung in the air, as if we were both poised, anticipating the moment one of us would shatter the stillness. At last, Margaret found her voice, though it emerged as little more than a whisper. "I left him," she said, her words lingering in the atmosphere, heavy with unspoken truths. My heart raced with excitement. "Excuse me? You parted ways with Mr. Smith?" She nodded, her eyes falling to the surface of the table. Indeed, I could no longer continue in deception. I could no longer maintain the facade that everything was fine. I felt a deep sense of unhappiness, Kyle. For quite a while now, I felt a sense of unhappiness. I remained seated, bewildered, attempting to comprehend her words. She had departed from her husband, the man she had shared decades of marriage with, the man who also held the position of my boss. I was at a loss for words. A wave of relief washed over me, yet an undercurrent of guilt tugged at my conscience, as if we were treading a path from which there was no return. "Why didn't you share this with me earlier?" I inquired, my voice scarcely rising above a whisper. I sensed that something was amiss, yet I never anticipated this outcome. Margaret's eyes shimmered with a depth of feeling. She inhaled deeply before responding, her voice quivering just a bit. "I was unsure of the way. I didn't intend for it to come across as if I was placing blame on you. There was nothing amiss on your part, Kyle. It was never centered around you. I simply couldn't continue to feign that everything was okay, that I was okay." She took a brief pause, her eyes locking onto mine. "I'm prepared to be with you now, if that's still what you desire. After much contemplation, I feel prepared to move forward. I desire to be by your side." My thoughts surged as her words took hold. She was prepared. Having gone through it all, she felt prepared to abandon her past and embark on a fresh journey alongside me. But would I be able to manage that? Am I the man she desires? The man capable of bringing her joy, regardless of the complexities and dangers involved? I had my doubts. It was as if an immense burden had abruptly settled upon me. Yet, I found it impossible to overlook the emotions she stirred within me. The bond we shared was undeniable, the intensity of our chemistry deepening since that very first night. The question lingered, was I prepared for it as well? Margaret extended her hand across the table, lightly grazing mine. In that fleeting instant, tranquility enveloped the scene. She spoke softly, asking if this was overwhelming. It felt like she was attempting to offer me some comfort. Yet, it was essential for you to be aware. I desire to be by your side, Kyle. I'm done with waiting. I gazed at her hand resting on mine, the comforting warmth of her touch anchoring me in the moment. A fragment of my being yearned to escape, to distance myself from the chaos we were crafting. Yet, there was another side of me, the one I had attempted to overlook for ages, that was prepared to dive in. Perhaps I was powerless to prevent this. Perhaps I simply chose not to. I'm uncertain about what this signifies, Margaret, I said, my voice raspy. Yet, I also wish to hold on to you. Her smile warmed her features, creating a gentle softness in her expression. We'll work through it as a team. The ground seemed to tremble, as if everything I knew had been upended. The focus had shifted away from guilt and its repercussions. It revolved around us. It revolved around our desires, even if it required venturing into uncharted territory. In an instant, the world transformed completely. We were more than just two individuals bound by a hidden truth. We were something beyond the ordinary. In that instant, I understood, with a profound certainty, that this was the irrevocable moment. I get it if this feels overwhelming, she said softly, as though she were attempting to comfort me. However, it was important for you to be aware. I desire to be by your side, Kyle. I'm done with waiting. I gazed at her hand resting on mine, the comforting warmth of her touch anchoring me in the moment. A fragment of my being yearned to escape, to distance myself from the chaos we were weaving. Yet, a different aspect of my being, one I had attempted to overlook for an extended period, was prepared to dive in. Perhaps I was powerless to prevent this. Perhaps I simply chose not to. I'm uncertain about what this signifies, Margaret, I stated, my voice raspy. Yet, I also wish to hold on to you. Her smile blossomed, a gentle warmth spreading across her features. We'll work through it as a team. The ground seemed to tremble, as if everything around me had been rearranged. The focus had shifted away from guilt and its repercussions. It revolved around us. It revolved around our desires, even if it required venturing into uncharted territory. In an instant, the world had transformed. We were more than just two individuals bound by a hidden truth. We were something beyond the ordinary. And I understood, profoundly, that this was the moment I could never reclaim. More than a year had passed since Margaret and I embarked on our journey together. Initially, it exceeded all my expectations and then some. Each day unfolded like a fresh page in a narrative I never imagined I would inhabit. The memory of that anxious thrill lingers when she revealed she had parted ways with her husband. How we endeavored to establish our place together in this unfamiliar realm. It was chaotic, ambiguous, yet undeniably authentic. We had managed to make it work, or at least that was my belief. In the initial months, it felt as though everything was aligning perfectly. We found our place in a cozy little house. Not overly lavish, yet inviting and warm. My position at the company remained solid, although it lacked the intensity of the past when I put in extra hours to advance my career. Margaret, in contrast, found it difficult to come to terms with the truth of our existence. My way of living was uncomplicated. Merely a standard salary. Transitioning from one moment to the next. Nothing extravagant. Nothing superfluous. I was indifferent to that. For me, it felt entirely ordinary. Yet for her, it felt like a jarring transition from the life she had been accustomed to. She had always enjoyed a life of ease, enveloped in affluence. She had spent years with Mr. Smith, and I could tell this was unfamiliar territory for her. Yet, I believed that love could close that divide. We were both convinced of it. For a time, it was effective. At the very least, that was my impression. As time passed, Margaret grew increasingly silent. It was the subtle details that caught my attention initially. The manner in which she would exhale softly as she settled into her seat for dinner. The extended silences that preceded her responses to my inquiries. Her tendency to retreat into her own thoughts after exhausting days was palpable. It's not the same as it used to be, when we could spend hours discussing everything and nothing at all. I reassured myself that it was merely stress or perhaps the weight of her new circumstances. Yet the reality was beginning to dawn. The pressure was more than mere stress. It transcended that. I found myself at a loss for what to do next. The harder I endeavored to support her, the further away she seemed to drift. She ceased to discuss our future together, and the plans we once made faded away. The mornings unfolded in serene stillness. She would head out to the gym or take care of errands, while I would set off for work. The laughter had faded away. Gone are the days of unexpected displays of tenderness. The blaze that once burned brightly appeared to have dwindled to mere embers. That evening, after dinner, everything reached a climax. We found ourselves comfortably settled on the couch. The stillness enveloping us deepens with each passing moment. A sense of inevitability washed over me, akin to a tempest on the horizon. She glanced my way, her gaze weary and far away. For the first time, I beheld the truth etched upon her visage. "Kyle, there's something I need to discuss with you." She spoke, her tone gentle yet resolute. A lump began to form in my throat. "What's happening?" I inquired, fully aware of the answer. She gazed at her hands, her fingers fidgeting together in a restless dance. "I've been reflecting deeply. Concerning all matters. Our story. I believe this is no longer effective." A wave of dread washed over me. I endeavored to maintain a steady tone, despite the quiver that betrayed me. "Could you clarify what you mean?" "We've been managing well. We have come a long way." Margaret gently shook her head, a subtle gesture that spoke volumes. "Absolutely not, Kyle. We have not." "Not exactly. I have been making an effort." "I truly have. Yet, I cannot continue to exist in this manner. This isn't the existence I'm familiar with. I feel like happiness has slipped away from me." I gazed at her, attempting to comprehend her words. "What does it matter? Are you expressing a desire to depart?" She nodded slowly, her eyes filled with unspoken emotion. "I believe it's necessary for me to do so. I feel out of place. I feel out of place in this existence. I'm struggling to adapt to it, Kyle. I gave it my all, yet it eludes me. Longing for the days gone by. I long for the warmth, the assurance. I long for the days when I had all I desired, free from the anxiety of where my next paycheck would come from." Her words struck me with the force of a blow to the stomach. I wished this outcome could be avoided, yet I sensed it lurking beneath the surface all along. The signs had been there all along, the distance, the coldness, but I could no longer turn a blind eye to them. "I believed we shared something genuine," I murmured, my voice scarcely rising above a whisper. "I believed we shared a deep connection. I believed that would suffice." Margaret inhaled unsteadily, brushing a tear from her cheek. "I also did. I truly did. Yet, affection alone may not suffice, Kyle. I can no longer maintain the facade of being someone I'm not. I require something beyond this. I believe you deserve a partner who can offer you all that you desire, rather than someone merely navigating through a life they struggle to embrace." I remained motionless, the gravity of her words enveloping me. She was indeed correct. She was unable to remain in this realm, and I was incapable of providing her with the existence she desired. I put in the effort to make it succeed, yet I fell short in her eyes. The truth weighed heavily upon her shoulders. Apologies escaped her lips as she rose to her feet. "My intention was never to cause you pain." I felt the urge to express myself, to articulate my thoughts, yet the right words eluded me. I merely nodded, observing her as she collected her belongings. She was departing, this time for eternity. She approached the door, hesitating for a moment before stepping outside. "Farewell, Kyle." And in an instant, she vanished. I lingered in that moment, gazing at the void she had vacated. The world I had created with her shattered in a heartbeat, leaving me lost in the chaos of trying to gather the fragments. Ultimately, love fell short. The divide between our worlds remained insurmountable. As I sat there in solitude, it dawned on me that often the most challenging task is to embrace the truth, even when it's the last thing you desire.